Welcome back once again to the #1 source for information, education, and inspiration on the most underrated career path in business. Today, you should get a license. This is the podcast edition. This is Rod Powell, and we are here today with a phenomenal man, individual, business person, entrepreneur. He is a husband, father, grandfather, as I mentioned, serial entrepreneur, has been very successful in the corporate world, but also has had a tremendous amount of success in financial services as an educator and as a professional as well for several years. He's an author, he's an educator. His resume is just a long list in awards and accolades and just all kinds of things that he's accomplished. But I'm excited to get into our conversation. I want to welcome to You Should Get a License, the podcast edition, Mr. Jason Mary. Jason, welcome, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great, and thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate having the opportunity to have this conversation. And I know that you always bring some talented individuals, so I really appreciate you considering me to have this conversation tonight.
Absolutely, man. Well, we want to share, the best and brightest, in our industry. You certainly are indicative of that, with what you've done inside of the business and outside of the business, and, the things that you're doing to kind of reach back and share information with others. So, thank you for being here. And thank you for sharing your story and just kind of sharing, the nuggets of guidance that people will be able to get from this conversation. Speaking of nuggets and guidance, one of the things that we talk about, on the platform is, really all of the different types of insurance. Some people call it insurance. Some people call it risk management. Some people call it financial services. Sometimes it's financial planning when you're adding the investment piece into it, which I know you do as well. Can you just give us just an idea or an insight into your area of specialty, your licenses, your designations, and what you do on a day-to-day basis?
Oh, certainly. So I have a number of licenses, securities licenses I have, as well as my life and health insurance license. So my securities license I have is a Series 7. And that's a general securities license. And I have the 66. So I'm a registered investment advisor as well. Additionally, my life and health insurance license. So those 3 licenses are really the licenses that I possess. Potentially we'll be getting more, but currently right now, those 3.
Absolutely. So for those, okay, you mentioned a word there that I want to kind of dig into a little bit because, people who are listening to the podcast, some of them have experience, in the business, some of them do not. When you say securities, what are you referring to in that regard?
So securities meaning equities or bonds, as well as options. When I was at Merrill Lynch, I had on my platform the capability to have individuals be able to have options as part of their portfolio. My current platform, options is not necessarily part of the platform, but wealth management is part of the platform. And as a registered investment advisor, I'm a fiduciary, and that allows me to manage money through the money managers that I work and represent, and give me the ability to help individuals build their wealth through wealth management strategies, and have money managers help me to make recommendations that can gear my clients the ability to build their wealth. That's a lot to unpack there. It's a really important piece because, right now when we look online, right, we see a lot of information about making money, right? What we don't see as much information on is what to do with the money once you have it. That's right.
Right. It's like, what comes next? Why do you, well, what are your thoughts around, the importance of money management, wealth management, asset management, to building a healthy portfolio of financial assets, and also from a legacy standpoint as well?
The biggest thing I would say is time. Okay. So the time value of money, and when people really understand the time value of money and they really get that, they understand like you can't procrastinate early on in life. You want to take advantage of time because when you have a principal, right, and you have interest earned on that principal, and when it's reinvested and continue to be reinvested over a long period of time, you can become very wealthy. So
That's
the
right.
time value of money, I would say, is the biggest business aspect that individuals need to really get their hand around and get their head around. Because
Absolutely.
you benefit tremendously. But people are not thinking that far ahead. They're thinking for today, or they're not thinking as though time will go by quickly, you know? So time is very critical.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of them things where, you know, you can either take advantage of it by utilizing it properly, or you can think that you have an unlimited amount, and then you look up and it's like, oh man, yesterday was 20 years ago,
Exactly.
right? You know, and either you prepared and you planned, or either you have not. No, it's so important. I just wanted you to just touch on that a little bit. I mean, speaking of time, let's take a trip. Let's go back in time. Let's go back in time. You know, coming into this business, typically people come from different backgrounds. Like, you know, my background growing up, you know, I thought I was going to be in the entertainment industry. I was going to be famous R&B singing, all that good jazz, right? And this industry just kind of finds its way to us, right? We may have met people in the past, and you know, we come upon them. Maybe they said something, and we like maybe never thought we'd be there, or maybe we thought we'd be there. Maybe it was a relative. Maybe it was somebody who's working information. I want to go back to, like, you know, a 9-10-year-old Jason Mary, right? And what were you dreaming of? What were you thinking of being when you grew up, when you became an adult at that time?
Yeah, that's going back. I'll be honest to say that I didn't necessarily have a blueprint that early on. However, as a teenager, I began to understand that I wanted to, you know, earn money for myself. And I realized that as an adult, by seeing my mom as a single parent, that it wasn't always easy to make ends meet. If you had to put food on the table, had to buy clothes for me and my brother, had to send us, say, to sleepaway camp in the summers or take us on vacations, all that costs money. So as a teenager, I began to understand, like, the more money you have, the more things you can do. The less money you have, less options you have to live the way you want to live. So I guess as a teenager, I began to say, you know, I really want to figure out how I'm going to earn a living. I didn't have a specific, I guess, career path at that point, but I knew that it was important for me to earn money if I wanted things. For example, like my brother, he was able to work and go to school, but I wasn't really that tight on my academics until later on in life. So my mom wasn't letting me go to work and school in high school. You follow what I'm saying? So I had to figure out, well, how was I going to get this money, and how was I going to earn a living?
Yeah. Let me ask you a question about that, because you mentioned that, you know, 9-10, hey, not really thinking about, you know, what the move is going to be in adulthood, but you did realize, you know, as you entered into your teen years, hey, look, you know, we need to make some money. We need to make sure that we have some access and opportunity. Now, you're from the Bronx, New York.
Correct.
Right. Bronx, South Bronx. Right. Is it South Bronx, or is it North? I mean, is there a North Bronx?
It's the Soundview area.
Okay.
Rosedale Gardens is where I grew up at, right over there, Bruckner and Rosedale. But it's the Soundview area, primarily where I grew up. Early on, I lived not too far, I say, from Yankee Stadium.
Okay.
I was more in the South Bronx,
Yeah.
but it's the Bronx, you know. It's
the Bronx. It's the Bronx. The boogie down. So look, in that area growing up, did you see any financial services or financial industry professionals around? Like, was that something that was exposed?
Well, I'll be transparent. You saw people around, but it wasn't necessarily financial services, but it was services that you were able to get paid for.
Right.
Not necessarily, but I mean, you had your candy stores, you had your retailers. So I guess your retailers was what I was exposed to from the standpoint of, business owners, but not necessarily financial services. But my mom, she worked for a bank. She worked for Citibank for 38 years. So from that perspective, in my household, financial services or money management skills was indoctrinated in me at a young and early age.
Yeah.
My mom worked at the bank.
No, that's a plus. That's a plus. I just asked because, I know that a lot of times with our industry, right, just in this realm, regardless of market specialties, you just don't often come across a lot of exposure, and until later on. And then when you find out that it exists, it's like, oh, well, where's that been? How come I ain't hear about that one? So I was just curious, growing up in the Bronx, if that influence was present. It wasn't present in Richmond, Virginia. I'll tell you that, either. So